Welcome to the Secrets of Personal Injury Law with Colin Bober.
Welcome to the Secrets of Personal Injury Law with Colin Bober. Colin is a personal injury attorney who has represented over 4,000 clients with a gross settlement recovery of over $50 million. Today's episode is the power of proof, evidence in a personal injury case. Thank you so much for joining us again today, Colin.
Happy to be back. Thank you.
So let's jump right in. What are the most important types of evidence that victims should gather at the scene of an accident to support their case?
It's most important to call the police at a minimum and collaborate with them. The police officer usually collects witness information, gets both sides of the story from each driver, and drafts a narrative and collects the insurance for you. But not all police departments come out for an accident if somebody's not or says they're not injured. And the problem with that is that a lot of people are so hopped up on adrenaline that they're not feeling injured and they're not thinking about what to collect in the first place. They weren't planning on getting in an accident today. And so if the police don't come out, and it's safe to do so, assuming that the other drivers are not combative and it's safe to communicate, I would always take a picture of their driver's license, grab a picture of their insurance card to determine who's actually the insured driver versus who's the insured owner. That can also create some value for a case, making sure that everybody who's responsible is included in any potential litigation. It's also important to at least identify where you were at the time of the accident, and maybe identifying any buildings that are around you of people or businesses that may have video footage, whether it was on their phone or camera feeds from a restaurant nearby. If a police report is not made, so you can at least try your best to collect the footage. You don't necessarily have to go collect it yourself, as long as the attorney knows where you were to try and search that area for that information. We can request that too. But as much information in terms of any phone numbers of any witnesses that were there, anybody that said anything, just as much information as possible. I mean, the idea is to throw the kitchen sink at your attorney with all the information you have, and the attorney should be qualified to sort through it.
So can you talk a little bit about why it's so important to preserve evidence immediately after an accident and why it's so critical to the success of a personal injury claim? Because like you said, often that's the last thing people are thinking of. They're in a daze, they're in a rush to get off to work or wherever they were heading to in the first place, etc.
Well, I think it's most important because, like I said, not every accident, police don't always come out for every accident. Most times they do, but sometimes they don't. And so if you don't have a police report and you don't have any witnesses because it was just you and somebody else who rear-ended you, all you have is a word versus word against each other. Well, you hit the brakes and I hit you, or something. You know, everybody's got a different story. And if you wait too long to identify anything that's around you to provide proof for the accident, for example, if I have a McDonald's that's right across the street from the accident and they have a camera, well, depending on their retention policy of that information, if you wait too long, that tape may roll over and that footage is gone, and that's the only thing that you have. And a lot of times people say, well, you know, there's a camera on the street. Well, the camera, in my experience, they're live feeds. They don't actually record. They're trying to monitor traffic. They don't record traffic. They're monitoring traffic. So it doesn't actually retain the information, right? So that's also something that may not be available. And so waiting too long to collect that information can really damage your case, because if the at-fault person gives a statement to their own insurance about what happened in the accident because it's required, the insurance company is paid to believe their policyholder. And if the policyholder says something different than the claimant, then they're just going to deny the claim based on what the policyholder said, because that's what they're paid to do. And if you don't have anything to refute that because you waited too long to collect it, then you don't have any option.
Sure, that all makes sense. So I'm curious, how can photographs, or you mentioned videos of the accident scene, help strengthen a personal injury claim? And exactly what specific details should be captured?
Personally, I think everybody should have a dash cam these days. Dash cams save lives now, based on light disputes and everything that's going on. You know, they're fancy now. You can have one pointed in the front, you can have one pointed in the back. They can show you the whole thing. But if you don't have that option, you know, what I would recommend, if not having a dash cam about this, how the accident actually occurred, take a video of the vehicle and show what kind of vehicle it was, what color was it, what is the license plate. You know, if you pop out of the car and it's safe to do so and you can record somebody at the scene, do they look like they were intoxicated? Do they look like they were distracted on their phone? Anything that gives me an indication of what the demeanor was, because I've had situations where the client said, yep, I think the driver was drunk. And to validate that, or to at least give us reason to look into it, the client said, yeah, when the defendant got out of the car and opened the door, a beer can fell out. Well, I mean, whether the defendant was intoxicated at the time is an open question, but at least it gives the attorney a reference point to look into their history and see if they have a history of drunk driving. So any piece of information that you can collect at the scene will usually benefit you, and it's the attorney's job to sift through that information. It's not a potential client's job to say, is this relevant or not? The best advice that I can give a potential client or anybody who's been in an accident whatsoever is to collect as much information as you think is relevant and give it to your attorney. And like I said, your attorney should be qualified to look through the information and determine what's relevant and what's not.
Do you have recommendations on the best way to do that? So you mentioned a dash cam, but do you recommend people keep like a pen and paper in their car or similar things?
I mean, nowadays, everybody's got a phone. Everybody's recording something on their phone, live feeds or whatever. And so I find it more effective to be able to take some sort of video, because I had a case a while ago where the client got hit by another driver. It was a simple rear ender. But when the parties tried to exchange information, the driver actually assaulted the client and tried to flee the scene. But she had it on video. And so insurance policies don't cover intentional acts. But we were able to use that footage to show the insurance company that, yeah, this is what your insured is going to look like in litigation. So you should pay this lady what she deserves. And they did. So I don't think it's so much as doing anything particular, like keeping a pen and paper in your car. You know, we live in a digital age now where everybody can record everything. The only caveat I say to that, like I said before, is make sure that it's safe to do so. You know, usually when somebody pulls out a phone, they don't want to be recorded. That's why I recommend a dash cam, because nobody's going to know if you have one or not. And if it's pointed at you, so be it. It's in the car. I'm not waving my phone in your face, you know. So always maintain a level of kindness and professionalism, as well as maintaining your safety before recording somebody else.
I think that's really great advice. So can you talk a little bit about how the role of police reports and incident documentation plays into preserving evidence, and how should victims ensure that they obtain these documents?
Everybody has the opportunity to pull their own police report based or directly from the Texas Department of Transportation. Usually it's not available until about 10 to 14 days after the accident, but it is public information and can be pulled based on one of the driver's name and driver's license number and the date of loss. So if you can identify that, you can pull your own police report. What happens though is that the police officer wasn't there at the time of the accident. The police officer is writing a report based on the testimony of two people that he or she got statement from at the time of the accident, as well as corroborating the facts of loss with any potential witnesses that were there. So there are instances where the police report will be made available, and it may be beneficial, it may not, depending on what it says. Now, if the client believes that the police report is inaccurate, then the client has the opportunity to reach out to the police officer and make an amended police report based on additional information that they might not have had before. And so it's really important to gather that information to be able to provide information to a police officer if something like that needs to be changed. Because that's the first thing the insurance company is looking for is, well, I want to see the police report.
Sure. And how can victims collect witness statements? And you mentioned it before. Why are eyewitness accounts so valuable in personal injury cases?
We call them independent witnesses for the simple fact that they have no vested interest in the outcome of any case whatsoever, right? And so if they don't have any vested interest in the outcome, then they're more likely to be truthful. So if you have an independent witness and says, yeah, I saw it, I was right behind the client when she had a green light and the other guy ran the red light and T-boned her. Well, that's very helpful if the insurance company says, well, my insured said he had a green light. Well, he couldn't have had a green light because I have an independent witness that says my person had the green light. And so that's what I mean. That's what I meant before, is the insurance company is paid to believe the people that pay them, right? So you have to produce information to either show that the person making the statement is not credible, or direct evidence like an independent witness or a dash cam to show that the defendant is not telling the truth.
How important is it to document medical treatment and bills? And how do these records contribute to providing damages in a personal injury claim?
If you get in an accident and your first inclination is, hey, I'm really hurt and I need to go to the hospital, then obviously you should go to the hospital in whichever way you feel the most comfortable to make sure at a minimum that you're stable, And so if you make that decision and you have an out-of-pocket expense, then you need to retain that. So a lot of people don't know that if you go to the hospital by ambulance and they do some x-rays to determine whether or not you have any broken bones and to ensure you're stable, you're going to have up to 4 bills that you're going to get in the mail. You're going to have a hospital facility bill. You're going to have an ER physician bill from the doctor that saw you. You're going to have a radiology bill. You're going to have an ambulance bill. And so you have to retain those because those are documents that you need to submit to the insurance company for reimbursement. And so that in itself is a good place to start. But most people don't know that they're going to get those 4 bills because they're like, well, I didn't get one of those. Well, it's probably because it hadn't come in yet. But every time you go to the hospital, it's broken up into several pieces that you need to wait for to make sure you present it to be reimbursed. Usually what happens in the hospital is they'll say, well, you're stable, so you're free to go home. But if you have any residual pain, then we recommend that you go see a physical therapist and they give you a referral, right? And then if you don't have any health insurance and you have to pay out of pocket for those expenses, then you retain that for reimbursement. If you are waiting for your vehicle to be repaired and you're a single mom of 4 and you need to get a vehicle to take your kids to school and you have rental expenses, you need to keep track of those. So it really just depends on what your course of care is and what your needs are to make sure that you maintain those expenses and any documentation that you may keep yourself about how you're experiencing life, whether you're having trouble sleeping, or you have numbness and tingling down your arm, those kind of subjective things. Keep some documentation of that personally, whether it's a journal or just a document that you draft when you have time to think about it, to make sure that not only are your medical bills covered, but also that your pain and suffering is documented at the time that you experience. Because the settlement is holistic. It's designed to compensate you for pain and suffering, as well as your economic damages in terms of your medical bills and lost wages. But you can't do it without documentation.
You read my mind. Holistic was exactly the word I was thinking of. So if victims are unable to gather evidence at the scene, what steps can they take later to ensure critical information is preserved for their case?
There is an opportunity for attorneys to send what we call a spoliation letter once we identify who the responsible parties are or who may have requisite information. So, for example, we were talking about a McDonald's that was right across the street. Well, if you get to an attorney and you say, well, I'm pretty sure that they have footage, then what an attorney would do is send a spoliation letter basically saying, hey, there may be some footage related to this accident. Please retain this information because it's related to an ongoing legal matter, and usually they do. And so there's also a data recorder in every vehicle. So if there's a liability dispute, you can also send a letter to retain that information to see if we need to pull it later. And most people will look around the scene and speak up and say, yep, I was a witness to this, and they'll give a phone number. And then the attorney can reach out to them and get their statement as to what they believe happened in the accident. There's a bunch of different ways. The problem is not so much what do you need to collect, it's more so you have to remember that that's something you need to do, but most people don't because of the adrenaline and things like that.
All great information. Well, Colin, as always, thank you again. Pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for tuning in to The Power of Proof, Evidence in a Personal Injury Case. To connect with Colin and his team, visit boberlawfirm.com. And please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review on our channel.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.